Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Alan Miner with Chiro Matchmakers with one of our other Chiro Matchmakers, Dr. Stephen Franson. Welcome,
Hey, everybody.
Dr. Franson. What we're talking about today is the why around why on earth you'd want to hire an associate doctor. It's one of the most common things that we help practices around the world with, and there's a lot of reasons why somebody wants to do this. And so we want to break that down and give you some insights so that when it's time for you to hire an associate, to hire your next associate, or unfortunately, if it's time to replace an associate, there's a little more context and thought behind why exactly you're doing it. Because as we've learned, the why really dictates everything else in this process, all the way down to who the absolute best person is going to be for the role that you have. Dr. Franson, kick us off.
Yeah, so this is one of the most important questions you'll ever ask in any initiative, definitely in this one, right? So Simon Sinek put it best with start with why, right? So when doctors approach us to say, hey, I want to hire an associate doctor, we're like, great, that's awesome. Hold on. Why do you want to hire an associate doctor? Alan, you and I have lots of experience in this space. Been associate doctors, have had multiple associate doctors, have helped many doctors place associate doctors. Here's the truth of it. The associate doctor a relationship or arrangement is one of the best things when you do it right. And it's a terrible thing when you do it wrong, right? So you hear us say all the time that 67% of these relationships fail, right? When you think about how terrible of a stat that is, 50% of marriages fail, and we think that's atrocious, right? And those people love each other, right? 67% of these relationships fail. And I would suggest that very often it's based on just this one question that nobody asks, which is why? Why do you want to hire an associate doctor? Look, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of bandwidth, there's a lot of brain damage that's going to come with the decision to bring in anybody onto your team, right? So you got to make sure that your why is big enough, right? So why do you want to bring on an associate doctor in your office? What are you trying to accomplish? What's your objective? So Dr. Al, when we ask a doctor, we're looking for certain answers from them, right? You get a sense of like, really, why do you want to make this investment of your time, energy, focus, and money? It's an awesome idea, but let's be super clear that you know exactly why you want to add an associate doctor to your practice, to your team, to your business. What are some of the answers that we typically hear? What do we want to hear from these docs?
Yeah, one of the most common answers is, and the one we love to hear is, I'm so busy, I need help. And that's a great one to be in. You've worked your tail off, you've had your head down, you've grown a business to a point where it's just too much. In fact, I'm in an interesting situation right now. I have an employee who worked for me for 5 years during the time that we were really experiencing massive growth, and when I brought my first associate doctor on. She's since had babies. Her babies have gotten older and they're in school, and she wanted to come back onto the team and help us out. And so we were just reminiscing the other day about that time when I hired my first associate doc, and I was in that position. We were really busy. And I mean, if one thing went wrong, it seemed like the whole shift just blew up in my face. It was just, things were that tight and that packed. But I have to laugh because I look back at absolutely how illiterate I was at the responsibility of hiring another person, another doctor, another professional to come on our team. I was oblivious to so many of the things that ended up causing huge problems with that relationship down the road, that had I had some foresight, or someone to just ask me some basic questions trying to see, all right, great, you're busy now, but what's this going to evolve to down the road? What role is this person going to be playing? What role do you want to play once everything's kind of fallen into place? I was blind to all of that, Dr. Stephen.
Yeah, no, it's true, Al. And, you know, clarity in answering this question, why do you want to take a doctor on, is critical, because not only is it going to help you find the right person, but it's also going to help you appreciate that person during the relationship, right? So at the end of the day, I love to hear things like, listen, like you said, I'm trying to increase the capacity of my practice. I've maxed out what I'm going to be able to do. I need somebody to come in here and help expand the capacity of the practice. Maybe that means I need somebody who's going to be a caregiver, somebody's going to help me adjust people, which is going to free me up, right? So there's another reason to bring in an associate is freedom. And what that typically means is time freedom for doctors. I want to create more time freedom. Maybe it's going to free me up so that I can become a better CEO for my practice and really lead my business, working on my business as opposed to in my business, as Michael Gerber taught us in the E-Myth, right? Or maybe it's going to free me up so that I can go and market, and I'm going to generate more leads or convert more leads and bring more new patients, new business into the practice. Or maybe it means time freedom means I want to be able to take a vacation, right? Without the whole place shutting down, right? Creating some level of durability with my practice where I could go away on a week, 2-week vacation. How about 6 weeks vacation a year? Doc, one of the most important questions you'll ever ask about your practice when you say, do I own a business or do I own a job, is the question, if I didn't show up to work on Monday, would anybody notice? Think about that for a second. For some of you are like, oh my goodness, right? The place would screech to a halt, right? So that's called durability. When you get to show up to work on Monday as opposed to you have to show up for work on Monday. So that's real freedom when you have the ability to add value even in your absence, right? So the idea of bringing somebody on to give you that kind of freedom where you could actually be away from the practice. Maybe it's to cut down on some of the exposure that you have as a practitioner. God forbid you ever got injured or there was something that went sideways with your health or some other circumstance that took you out of the adjustatorium. What would happen to your practice there? That's a point of exposure. And in my world, that means a point of stress, right? So one of my core values is freedom. Another one is peace of mind, right? So what's critical to me is whenever I brought in an associate doctor, it was almost always to create a combination of increasing capacity, but also to create the freedom that I wanted to have with my schedule to free me up to do the things that I was called to do, and also to cover my exposure when it comes to who's going to take care of all these patients if anything happens to me. Other answers might be things like expansion. Like, hey, I want to plant multiple practices. I want to do a plant to purchase or a plant to partner, or I have a franchise and I want to place doctors and I'm looking for expansion, or privately owned clinics I want to expand. And then for some doctors, it's an exit, right? It's an exit strategy. Hey, I'm getting ready to come into this next chapter of my career, the 4th chapter, we call it, of a chiropractic, the arc of the career, and I'm looking for an exit strategy. I want to bring in my successor, somebody who can take this place, run it, and go with it.
Yeah, it's life changes. I know my first associate doc, looking back, it was a big life change. My son was born, and I wanted to be home in time for dinner. It was really that simple, along with needing someone to help so I could get out of the practice a little earlier. We see folks come to us, docs come to us who are single and in a new relationship, or are now divorced and not in a relationship, or maybe as you taught us, Dr. Franson, they did step 1, which is build a kick-ass practice. And now it's step 2, they want to start freeing themselves up to do that next chapter. And of course, the folks we love as well are those people who study business. And just as you touched on, they want to scale and maybe focus more on that CEO role in the practice. As you start to become a little more self-aware, you realize even if you can do all things in your practice, it doesn't mean that you're great at all things in your practice. And what we found is the practices and the businesses that really explode, oftentimes the owner starts to learn, and hear us on this, everyone, usually the owner's strengths become the business's weakness. And so when the owner is very aware of their strengths and can isolate the job down to their strengths, and then hire all these other people to do all the other tasks and roles around them, those are businesses that really, they scale in an absolutely brilliant way. And so there's all kinds of reasons why you might want an associate doctor, but the point of this is for you to stop and just consider your why, because when somebody comes to us for help, that's where we always start. You know, we're going to get to who the right person is down the road. You know, a lot of that conversation starts with the why, and that kind of leads us into our next conversation, Dr. Franson, which is about the how, right?
Yeah, so we want to talk about in our next video, we're going to talk about how do you want the practice to function, right? So we're going to talk about the business model, we're going to talk about the practice model, right? So all of these questions, as you're answering them, are leading you down a pathway towards clarity around who you're looking to hire, right? So we started with why in this series, which is exactly where you should start, Doc. We want to get clarity around why do you want to bring an associate doctor in? Exactly what are you trying to accomplish? What is your objective? What do you want them to do that's going to make you really happy to add them to the team, strike them a check, and build greater influence by leveraging other people in your practice. So in our next video, we're going to talk about the how. How do you want the practice to run? What's the practice model? What's the business model? So check it out there. I'm Dr. Stephen Franson for Dr. Alan Mine and myself. Thanks for joining us, and keep an eye on this series. It's going to be awesome. We're going to create extraordinary clarity for you if you go through these thought exercises with us. We want you to land on that right person. It's so critically important that we get this right. If you get it right, everybody wins. If you get it wrong, it's pain for everybody, right? So tune in next time. I'll see you in the next video. Dr. Al, thanks so much, man.